Okay, hello, good evening. Twice in 1 week, Tali.
We're really just spoiling everyone, aren't we?
Yeah, no, I'm glad it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I like our conversations. I like getting to talk. I think it's as much as it's nice for me to hear like your ideas and your opinions. It's good to like kind of like discuss them and say them out loud and kind of like flush out my own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I find it helpful. Because for so long all of them existed like only in my head and me like screaming like silently at my computer screen.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think I really appreciate our conversations because we agree about so much, and so it's a good like sanity check, and we get to kind of complain together. But I think there are like interesting little disagreements between us, not whether prescriptively or even just like the way that we like analyze some of these things. Yeah, so I appreciate these conversations, and yeah, this is what's considered fun for me. This is my extracurriculars. So I'm glad that we found 2 days this week to make this happen.
I know, awesome, even with the time difference, which is the killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we spoke. I think it was Tuesday. Was it Tuesday? It was Tuesday.
Yeah.
We'll say it was Tuesday. And I remember you were asking like, what are my most left-wing positions? And like on the spot, I was like, well, I know I have some. And I do. I don't know if they like, but I wanted to kind of maybe like, I don't know, clarify or go into it a little bit more. I don't know if they come from like an ideological left-wing position, but I think one of my stances is like on drugs and drug use and decriminalization of some things or small amounts of some drugs. And this really does not come from a lens of like we should treat people with compassion. Like if you told me the way to fix this was to remove all compassion and be very mean to people and shame them and treat them badly, and like this would cure the problem, I would be on board for that as like a solution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I say that those kind of things, or like that kind of maybe decriminalization and more treatment based and more harm reduction based, it's more just because I don't see the other things working. And I think it also goes way too far on the very permissive end, which is really bad and really dangerous and all of that. But at the other end, it's just I don't think it's an effective approach. So it's more left, yes, but it's not that. I don't know. It's not from like a place of like, I think we just need to be nice to people and
Right.
you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. Yeah.
Drugs are another place where like I don't know exactly. I don't know, I don't know what my prescription really is. I obviously like right now it's kind of popular on the right to like and not even just on the right. Like I know a lot of normies who have this opinion, basically like the weed is just too much, like especially, with it being legalized recreationally, most recently in New York, which is where I'm from. People are just upset. They're like, it smells like weed everywhere. People are just like doing drugs, on the corners. And now like I smoke a shit ton of weed. So like I simply have there's no like reactionary response that's going to trigger within me. And like it's not that I should incriminate myself, but it's not recreationally legal where I live, and I want it to be. Again, purely because I like weed and I smoke weed, you know what I mean? And whatever. I think I tend towards a more libertarian attitude around drugs. But yeah, I mean, I think like I've said this before, but the fun thing about changing your mind and like being open to having your mind change is like you could just like release any attachments you had to policies or prescriptions, right? That weren't, I don't really know what the what the correct prescription is, I wonder if you were slightly referencing like needle exchange programs and stuff like that, like where is the line between like criminalization and intervention
Yeah.
in some way, I guess, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think like the
gonna
harm reduction insofar like with
I need to
needle.
shoot a fly out. I'm just gonna open my back
Okay.
door. I'm listening
Yeah.
to you though,
Okay.
but I'm gonna
Yeah. No
try to get
problem.
this guy out of here.
Yeah. I think things within harm reduction with like needle exchanges and I guess like clean pipes and stuff like that. I've really not had any problem with, and I don't really think that those end up like causing more drug use than there already is. I guess in Canada they did like some decriminalization of like all drugs or even hard drugs in some zones in some areas, and that I don't think ended up being very good. They were doing also like if you were addicted to heroin or fentanyl, you could get like prescription dilaudid as a replacement for it, but then people were selling it, and there was like you could get prescription heroin for a while, but it was like for a very small like sample size, and maybe in the small sample size like it in some kind of like clinical trial that people are going to test that and see if that works. I suppose that could be okay, but with all of the other things happening at the time, I just don't know that those were good policies for Canada. And I think previously I would have been much more amenable to like decriminalization or legalization. And now I think maybe very small personal amounts of like what would be considered like hard drugs. I guess in some areas maybe I could be okay with. But I think that those have to be very, very small amounts. Because I heard that some of the amounts were like way too big, and it was like all kinds of like I think we're creating like, you know what I mean, like too permissive of a culture, in that regard. I don't like. You should be able to have very, very little heroin on you when you get arrested, and like not be charged with possession, if any. You're muted.
I knew that. First of all, I did not get the fly. I couldn't locate it, and now that I sat back down, I see it again.
Yeah.
So I'm just being taunted. So if I block my camera out again, that's what I'm going to try to get again. But yeah, I don't really know how I feel about the harder drugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I remember in college, I studied psychology, and I took like a psychopharm class, and I was like a TA for that class, and there is a meaningful difference between like marijuana and cocaine and heroin. There's a difference between marijuana, cocaine, and heroin. There's a difference between cocaine and heroin, and just like what it's doing to your brain. And I don't want to like sound like such a boomer, but like with like heroin, you're basically like rewiring your brain, like
yes,
kind of almost instantly, right? And like some people, for a myriad of different factors, can be somewhat unaffected by that. They can kind of like put these things down. But I remember my my psychopharm professor, who really was not like he wasn't like a social justice warrior, but he would say all the time, like it's easy to judge, like heroin addicts and all of this stuff. He's like, but really the only mistake that you can kind of hold people responsible for is the first time that they do it, because you are like extraordinarily motivated to have that experience again once you have it the first time.
Yeah, to keep
and
doing
so
it,
right, and so it does feel different to me, like weed and heroin. So I don't know the best way to treat all of these things now. And with that said, like, and weed is the DEA and the drug schedule that we have right now is like largely arbitrary. Like weed is like can be harder to study than cocaine. Like it's in like medical, in like scientific, controlled scientific settings even. So there was a lot of like arbitrary regulation that went into that. And so like as a sort of newfound conservative, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure there's some regulation that was like unnecessary and arbitrary here. But I don't know how I don't know that I think it's probably really good to stigmatize harder drugs, like, you know.
For sure. I fully agree that there should be like strong social stigmas and consequences. And I think the culture has like a responsibility in a way to like keep its guardrails on in that way. So I think that was one. And then probably I would just say I don't know, maybe it's my most left wing. If I was thinking about it now, it would be probably my stance on like prison and incarceration, because I guess, I generally don't think people who are violent offenders, who are like non-violent offenders, should be in cages, like, period. So I think I could be shown, and I'm not like married to these positions, but I think like community-based incarceration programs for people who are non-violent offenders and non-repeat offenders, things change if you become like a habitual criminal, obviously, are probably a better way to go. We don't necessarily want to be putting violent offenders in the same places as non-violent offenders. Reintegration is never guaranteed once you take somebody out of their community. So I think things like a small period of not small period, but like a small portion of a sentence could be served in like a jail, and then a lot, like the bulk of it would be served like either in a house arrest or like a halfway house or in a probation. And if somebody would fuck up, then obviously they would go to jail. But I think that more programs like that would probably yield better results and like allow people to re-enter into their lives and like reduce the criminality that they're exposed to and ultimately the recidivism rates. But I'm not married to these positions, but I really have, I guess, a hard time with like that amount of like state power putting people into like, and especially the way conditions in jails are. But also like with the way the world is now, these are not policies I think can happen. So these are not things I would necessarily go and advocate for tomorrow, but those are things like ultimately I think that I would want to see changed in like a longer, time horizon, if you will.
It's I like what you're saying there. I think similarly, so like when I was at my most lefty and whatever, right, as we've talked about in our last couple of conversations, I was doing jail support and I was like abolish the police. I remember in 2020 I like really woked my mom up, which I had a lot of regrets about after, because I feel like she continued to sort of radicalize as I started to like move to the right. She continued to sort of radicalize to the left, and I feel some level of responsibility for that. She's not super crazy now. I think she's probably moderated a little bit since, especially since learning that her daughter was a Trump voter. But I remember I would take her, she wanted to go to protests and stuff with me because I was protesting like every day. This fucking fly, now it's back. But the one sign that she was really uncomfortable with and she like she wouldn't hold and she wouldn't like stand next to me was like abolish the police. Like that was just like a bridge too far for her. But so that was my stance, and it's a really like it's a kind of a brain dead. It just like requires no thinking and whatever. So that's not serious, obviously. But I think maybe something that I wouldn't say the left gets right, but maybe like should be taken more seriously that I like that you pointed out is the environment of prison can fuck up good people, right? And so it's like we actually might be now there's no easy solutions, right? And especially because we don't have the sort of infrastructure or institutions in place right now to have these varying levels of discipline, right? But there, I think, and I'm just gonna like couch all of this with a giant asterisk. Like I'm open to having my mind changed about this if there's like,
for sure,
good social science data available, and I there's limitations to how good social science data really can be, but I do think there's truth to the fact that like, the experience of being incarcerated and being surrounded by violent people and all of this stuff makes it harder for people to, to reform and enter back into society as contributing members of society. And so I think there's something to that, certainly. And I appreciate the distinction that you made, because I think something that the right rightfully latches onto is when we have these like, big newsworthy cases like the Irina, I can't remember her last name now, the woman who was the Ukrainian woman who was stabbed on the train, and it's like it turns out this guy had like 14 previous arrests. Like that is, yes, we should be angry about that, right? And people who have had violent, it makes sense. Like, that was a kind of not black pilling, but red pilling, I guess, moment, or part of my ideological change was like, some people, you can't just like love the violence out of everyone. You can't resource build the violence out of some people. You know what I mean? Like some people are fucking violent. And we could like argue about how much control they have over that, and that's gonna dip. Some of these people might be like cognitively impaired in certain ways, and they've got all this genetic loading potentially and whatever. So I'm with that we need to take that more seriously, right? And that does need to be punished consistently and more seriously. But there is probably something to non-violent offenses, housing all of these people together, right? And prison is not that prison should be fun, but we have like, a lot of jails and prisons in this country. I say this, I can't even finish my sentence because I can hear the right-wing response that I partially agree with, right? Which is like, well, it should be a miserable place, right, as deterrence for people to not want to do bad things to be sent there. But I mean, their jails are like dirty, like like even just to start off with, like, unclean, unsafe in that way, unclean, right, environments. So
and there's a difference between making something like fun and enjoyable, and like, which I don't think like jail or any sort of incarceration should be, and being an environment that like will destroy the average person's psyche to a degree that when they get out, they, it gives less chance for them to be able to have any sort of like, meaningful, like meaningful change, you know what I mean? So and Zero Fucks asked, where was it? What about victimless crime? People can ruin someone's life financially. I don't consider that a victimless crime at all. There's definitely a victim if you're ruining somebody's life financially or stealing from them. It might not be a violent crime, but you should still like have to, like, there should definitely still be penalties for that. But I think oftentimes, if it's like some type of fraud or something, I think there's ways that we can protect the public and the people from the person who committed the crime, while also punishing them, but without punishing them to an extent that like they like, can't ever be reintegrated. And reintegration is just really, it's like really hit or miss. And that's the thing that I think, when you're really taken out for too long and then put back in society, I think like reintegration is never guaranteed. And to a degree, like, well, you have to suffer that, like, that potential if you do a crime. Yes, but then like, so does everybody else in society with you. And that's just kind of not what we want. And I think what shapes us for me a lot is like I grew up in like juvenile detention. So from like 14 to about just until close till I turned 18, I was in like juvie, and it's not like jail, but it was like I was in like a locked unit for like quite a long time. You know, it's like a tiny little room. I was in a tiny little room with a little metal desk with a little swivel chair and like those frosted glass windows and doors with magnetic locks. And that like fucked me up. I mean, I was a kid, so obviously it fucked me up. But like I can see even as an adult how that could fuck somebody up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the mentality. And we were just a bunch of like girls in there. But I can believe and I can see how that will impact people over time. You know what I mean? And that just like, and it's not necessarily from a place of compassion. It's just also like, I don't know that it works.
No,
I don't, and it doesn't seem like it's working.
To sell this to people who are more on the right, the argument that you're making is not right. It's not about compassion to the person who's in prison. It's like, if your goal, like, especially, to the point that Zero Fox was making, that there are victims, right? That we're essentially trying to make society safer for the people who are following the rules. Your argument is, well, society is going to be less safe when this person does eventually get out, if we're not considering the way that we are doing this. And part of it comes down to sort of philosophical questions of like, what is the purpose of our justice system and prison system, right? People on the left will say the purpose is supposed to be rehabilitation, but arguably, obviously, the purpose is punishment, right? And also like protection for the rest of society. But then you like, I don't want to tie this to the Epstein thing because that's like too hot and really unrelated in so many ways. But then you have just sort of like, I think sometimes, from what I can see, at least, there are some people on the right who are a little too zealous about just like punishment, like kind of depending on the crime, like can't and shouldn't last forever, right? Like even if our concern is not the person, our concern is society and the victim and all of these things, right? Like we have just, we don't just, everyone doesn't walk the plank, whether whether you punched a guy in the face when you were drunk or like intentionally murdered a house full of an orphanage, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
We have determined that there should be different punishments for different crimes. And so that does mean like leaving a door open for people to come back to serve their time, right? To pay their price and then come back to society. And this is a topic, this is a book that I've recommended a lot before, and I think it holds up. I mean, I've reread it several times, and the author is a little woke for me, but I think like I really appreciate the thrust of the book, which is So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, I just think like I don't know. I think this conversation is so hard because like everyone is bringing to the table sort of like a different goal. Of what are they most concerned with rehabilitation of the individual person who's being in prison, even if they can, even if that is sort of like nested within wanting society to be safer for everyone. And so that's why you need to rehabilitate this person, right? Or is it just punishment and punitive retribution in a sense? People are trying to get different things out of this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just think, yeah, and as somebody who's like studied psychology, like you have, like, I'm not saying I studied, I'm saying like you, as somebody who has studied psychology, you understand that like people are gonna you know what I mean?
Right.
To a certain degree, like they're gonna respond to, like, not all the responses are gonna be the same, but like there's certain core things about people, you know what I mean? That like
patterns will emerge. Yeah.
And if you're looking at the way that system is working right now, I would just argue that it doesn't seem to be working very well. And maybe this is maybe like I did the wrong way. That's fine. I just like have I'm always suspicious about the state having so much power. you know, and having
Well,
the
that
power
was
to
yes.
put people away for so long and to lock them up and to have very strict control over somebody's bodies and movements for decades at a time for certain types of punishment. Like those are all things that I'm very, very uncomfortable with.
Yeah,
Especially for
that's the other
non-violent
side of the
crimes, when
coin.
there's ways that we
Yeah.
can prevent these things from happening by like kind of like cutting off people's like access or other rights, or putting them under a form of incarceration, so they have like, so they don't have access to guns, or they can't have access to computers. So you're not free, you're still under a type of incarceration, but you have more freedom. So it's just like, how much power do we want to give the state over people? And I'm always very skeptical about them having more than they need. You know?
Yeah, no. Right. And that's the other side of the coin that also needs to be considered. And I think that's an appeal that can be made to certainly at least the sort of libertarian minded people on the right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, is like, how much power do we want to give the state? Especially when, I mean, you can point to some people on the left right now who are frothing at the mouth, just exclaiming that the first thing that they're going to do when they get power is retribution, and they are talking about legal retribution. In fact, they've all sort of recently coalesced around the idea that like it was Merrick Garland's decision not to prosecute Trump that is the reason that we're in this issue. You know, like they all feel that it was their lack of punitive justice basically that led them here. So yeah, right. Like, how much power do we want to give the state? And then, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is the dispositionally liberal part of me. I don't know. Maybe classically liberal, but like, in the same way that like I'm willing to acknowledge that some people are just more violent, in the same way that I'm sort of that I am essentially a hereditarian. Like, I do think like there are lots of things that are basically like you're not gonna you can't change. Lots of things you can't change about people and whatever. And yet I'm also thoroughly convinced that there are always exceptions to this, right? And like phenomenal exceptions. So, right, there are people in every people group, including the group of like criminals and whatever, who can and will, you know, go on to self-reform and can and will contribute greatly to society after that, right? So like I like to like, in my mind, leave the door open. And again, that doesn't mean for every crime.
For sure.
And people should have to sort of like earn that, right? And that needs to be part of it too. I think probably part of the psychological experience of the person who did the wrong, you know? In a similar way to what someone was saying earlier with like the drug abuse stuff, is like the person really needs to want help, that, or we need to be willing to institutionalize people. And that's another kind of conversation here of like how we should be treating people in the prison system. There are a lot of people who are going to prison and they are being, I'm glad they are being taken off the street because they are dangerous and whatever, but they're severely mentally ill. You know what I mean? And prison is not going to treat that. It's going to exacerbate that very likely.
So it was not compassionate to get rid of mental institutions. I mean, they weren't good, but like the answer was not to get rid of them. You know what I mean? It was to make them better.
Right.
Like,
well, and my understanding is that was unfortunately they fell I'm sure I'm oversimplifying, but like the right didn't want to pay for them anymore, essentially, right? They were a drain on sort of like public resources and you know, tax dollars and stuff like that. And the left basically gaslit themselves into believing that there's like more dignity, that saying no basically is more important than like having any chance of living a dignified life, right? That like you're and again, like I don't know, part of me, my libertarian spirit, like agrees with that too, like in the total abstract, right? Like having agency and, you know, control, you know, your destiny. But it's not more compassionate to let someone rot and die in the street than to take them against their will off of the street, right? And put them into
a certain presence of mind to be able to appreciate that agency. Without that, then you know,
Right.
I think it's okay that, you know, we pick people up and put them somewhere where they can't hurt themselves or others, or at least try and stabilize them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I would be surprised if that were what like the right didn't want to pay for it. I also wouldn't be surprised if like the right were looking at like the way the institutions were and were like, this is horrible. We shouldn't fund this. And then, you know, like that there's probably more to it than that. And I don't know, but like just reflexively, that's probably what I had heard or my understanding of it too. But then where is that understanding coming from? So I have, you know, probably have to check the actual record. You know what I mean? Rather than the story that like we kind of like absorbed over time. Like if you haven't done like more recent like looking into it, then it's like the story that you bought into like as somebody on the left. So it might, you know, there might be some like looking into the facts of it, which is
even my inclusion
so much of my life, you know.
No, totally.
And checking even the record for real.
Even my inclusion just now of like the right essentially not wanting to pay for it anymore is me adding to that, right? Because I didn't really have a left-wing perspective on why it was wrong to close the institutions, because I didn't believe it was wrong to close the institutions, right? And so my change in belief was like, wow, this was not a compassionate thing. And it was, I think his name was Jonathan Rosen, who wrote the book. I'm just going to butcher the whole thing. I can't remember the book's name, but he wrote about his schizophrenic genius friend, basically, who in the 80s, you know, in the time of like deinstitutionalization, was just sort of like failed because he was really smart too, but really mentally unstable, and like goes on. It's just a tragedy, basically. He was a danger to himself and others, right? And basically this tragedy of his friend who he loved very much. So that was like my first introduction. And so it was like while I was already having my mind change in the sort of heterodox space. And so what I had heard at that point was critical of the left. And it was only even very recently that I heard the criticism of the right in this conversation, which is like, well, the right, in some ways, I think the right takes the messaging of the left because it's convenient and culturally salient to pursue their goals. So like the right kind of jumped on how abuse, and again, maybe there was like truth to this. I wasn't alive. I was born I'm a 90s baby, right? So I literally wasn't alive for this. So I can't comment on the veracity of these claims. But the right, from my understanding, jumped on, you know, these are abusive institutions, right? Because they saw the sort of financial burden that these institutions were. And so the left was saying that this is undignified and unjust and abusive and all these things. And the right was like, yeah, you're right. Actually, these places are pretty bad. Let's shut them down. And I'm sure that's oversimplified, but I even only just recently accounted for any criticism of the right in that analysis, basically, of deinstitutionalization.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a complex, I guess, like the whole thing, you know what I mean, on like how we treat people who are maybe more prone to different types of violence or criminal aspects from mental illness or from just being, you know, criminals. But yeah, so I think that's more of like a lefty leaning position, but like I said, I'm also like not married to it, but it's something that I like look at like with like some amount of suspicion. And like I don't know if this doesn't seem to be working, guys. Like you know, and I don't think we scrapped the whole thing. Like I'm very much in favor of like, and I don't know that it would work in the way the world is now, but like small incremental changes to make things ever so slightly better. I don't want to like tear it all down. You know what I mean? At all. Like, no, let's not tear it down. Let's keep building on what we have, please, you know.
No, totally. Right. This is where I just become like an institutional shill. And I'm just like, I heart the deep state. And I just want to like tattoo that on my forehead. Because it does feel like the extremes on the left and the right want to just tear it down. in
Yeah.
different ways. They mean different things, and they want to tear different institutions down. But that is the response coming, from both extremes, and I don't want to feed that at all.
No. Nor do I. And I think I don't know if it's like a thing that with age, which is, but as I got a little bit older and started to like kind of have like my disposition slightly shift, it wasn't just because like I said, it wasn't just because I'm not a compassionate person or I don't care about people or all these things. It's just like I started looking at people like earnestly, like how do people act for real? Like what motivates humans, or what looks like what seems to motivate humans that we can see. And I was like, oh, everything that like everybody wants to get rid of is just gonna it's gonna find itself all over again. And I don't know that we roll the dice that we end up anywhere near better than where we are now. And in fact, I think there's many chances we end up far worse after much death. You know what I mean? So I'd rather like skip that or like not, you know what I mean? Not go there and just kind of like iterate, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I had two things that are going to seem really unrelated, and they like are, but that you just like triggered within me when you said like, just sort of like, let's be honest. Two things got triggered for me. The first one is like, again, part of my sort of ideological change. And I'm sure this is all just like one giant straw man if you're like someone on the left listening to this. I'm sure no one on the left really enjoys listening to Kay and I speak, period. I was gonna say speak about, period. But to me, a large part of it was being like, let's get so for fucking real right now.
Yeah.
Even, you know, like there's this conversation, there's this dumb conversation happening of like among the Jasmine Crockett defenders that like that, you know, racism and sexism are rearing their ugly heads again, you know, and like people call her unelectable, and that's essentially code for like N-word, you know, like dumb N-word. Like it's just like crazy. All of this crazy shit. And I just want to be like, no, let's be so for fucking real, especially on the left, especially within liberal and anything to the left of that spaces, and even in conservative spaces for maybe different reasons, honestly. But even in more right of center spaces, there's an obvious advantage to being a person of a colored person. I hate person of color. It's the dumbest thing out there. So I like to say colored person. But like, let's be honest about this. Sure, there is bigotry, and people are more confident in expressing that right now. Although some of that is shock jock value, whatever. But it's like, no, let's be real. Being a woman and being Black is an advantage to you. People like want to confer special privileges on you, and part of that was I felt like I could say some of this stuff because it was like, I'm gay and I'm a woman, and I'm just like, let's be. You know, I went from believing essentially that made me all the more oppressed and looking for microaggressions in every corner to being like, actually, like, I literally like qualify for things, tangibly qualify for things that could materially benefit me because I am a woman and because I am gay. Actually, like there are many things that not just programs and stuff that I can apply for, but that like, I will get asked unprompted if I want to participate in something or whatever, because I'm what and I do it. For the most part, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like I don't seek these things out, but if the opportunity comes across my desk, you know what I mean? Like I'll do it. So it's like, let's be so for real. Let's be honest about what's actually happening right now. And that is that you have social cachet. You get extra tokens if you belong to one of these marginalized groups. It really doesn't hurt you. It's not a negative against you, at least within the wall, especially in a primary. You know what I mean? In a left-wing primary, that is not fucking hurting you.
No, not in a left.
If you're failing as a Black woman, you sort of already have a handicap there. You're probably really, like really limited in the ways that Jasmine Crockett obviously is, in the ways that Kamala Harris was. Like you're probably underwhelming and unimpressive, right? Because actually people are more likely to want to give you the benefit of the doubt and give you that push and give you that representation and all of these things, right? So that's where I feel like there was just no honesty. And then the second totally unrelated tangential thing that you triggered for me in what you were saying is that like these, if it's true, it will essentially recreate itself, right? So it's like if the left is wrong and human nature, and we're not blank slates, and there is sort of human nature, right? Then these same problems will manifest again. Right. If we have the revolution and we start from scratch, we're gonna still see these patterns emerge because humans do this. And that just reminded me of in the trans conversation with autogynephilia, which is the theory of the most common form of trans, basically, which is like a man's desire to be a woman, basically sexual, romantic, emotional desire to embody what he is attracted to and what he loves. It's not always so like explicitly sexual. It's some of these people actually are like sort of asexual, especially because they're really uncomfortable with their bodies because they wish they had a woman's body. So it's a very complicated thing. But basically, I really believe in the validity of autogynephilia. And it's there are lots of trans people who don't. They hate it. They think that it's the stigmatizing label, that it, it contributes to people seeing them as perverts and not taking them seriously and whatever. And so most trans people outright reject this category, but then they will create new categories with different names that are not stigmatizing, and they will just recreate the HSTS, the homosexual, transsexual versus autogynephilic transsexual binary all over again. Like there's like this famous video of ContraPoints where she's like debunking AGP, autogynephilia, and she's debunking this AGP versus HSTS binary while saying, yeah, I can classify all the trans people I know into group A and group B. Like, okay, so you literally like you just see this all the time in like trans online spaces. They will talk about the two types, and they're using nicer language or more gender affirming language and whatever in the way that they're talking about it, but they just recreate the thing because it's there. It's actually happening.
And they're obsessed with like the quote unquote narrative control over it, which is why they want to couch it in their language so they can like get the appropriate framing, right? So yeah. But yeah, no, I definitely think, yes, there is a human nature. And I think we will come to repeat things. And I don't think if we fucking roll the dice, like things necessarily get better. I think the chances that that it can get a lot worse. And I don't know. I don't know. Like some people, like they're like, yeah, we want revolution. I'm like, I don't know. Like I have a hard time believing that you really like you're not out there like starting it, so maybe you don't really want it. Like I think that there's like this romantic idea of it, which I get, because I found like the idea of fighting for revolution very like enticing and romantic, and it gives you purpose and it's kind of cool and whatever. But at the same time, I don't know that people really want that. I think they just like the fight, Yeah.
And I think too, not everyone wants, this is a first go at this thought, so bear with me if it doesn't come out super coherent, but not everyone wants revolution. The revolutionaries are selling populism to a population of people who aren't
manipulated people,
right, who aren't super plugged in, right, who aren't super plugged in and have this like general societal malaise and stuff like that. Because most people like you have the like, I mean, just for example, right? Even like a couple of years ago, before populism, I mean, it's hard to say. Populism, it's obviously not new, and it's not new in America either. I mean, Bernie Sanders was selling populism. And so I guess what I'm about to say, I'm already kind of contradicting myself here a little bit, but like the correct word for someone like Hassan Piker, for example, it's not populist, it's Marxist, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's revolutionary leftist. But now Hassan's the populist guy because populism has like real salience now on the left and on the right. And so, and same thing with people on the right. Like I think there are like actual revolutionaries and people who I want nothing to do with their project, sort of like post-liberal people on the right.
Yeah.
And I know there are people who would call themselves post-liberal who I think are normal, good people. And so I'm not trying to paint too broad of a brush here, but yeah, you have people who want revolution who are then selling populism to the general, to the public, and it's like it's nefarious on from the revolutionaries. They know what they're doing, right? They know that they are.
Yes.
And Hassan beautifully says it out loud, says it for us. He was just, even the other day when he was in Qatar, talking about how his role is agitative propaganda, right? He wants to agitate the people so that they're going to be more likely to follow him down the funnel of radicalization toward revolution. So it's nefarious on behalf of those people. And then just so many people kind of get sucked up into it, and that's why I'm like so anti-populism. But it and this sort of reminds me of a conversation I just listened to between David Bernstein and Nia Lecht. Do you know who either of those people are? Am I speaking gibberish right now?
I think it sounds familiar, but I'm not sure right off the bat.
They're both American Jews. David Bernstein wrote a book, I think it's called Woke Anti-Semitism, but basically like before he was someone who I wasn't following that closely, but I was aware of his work because I feel like we were working in the same direction, especially pre-October 7th, which is he was basically trying to wake Jews up pre-October 7th, and then his message became all the more salient after October 7th. But he was trying to wake Jews up to the fact that basically this oppressed versus oppressor binary, this social justice way of thinking is always going to come down to hurt the Jews, like it's not actually protecting us. It doesn't make us good, righteous, moral people, that this is a broken ideology. We cannot we're not going to get to just be the good ones and the exception in it. We're not going to be seen as this like valuable oppressed class, and that is wrong anyway. So that was like his thing. And again, he's been vindicated is really a harsh word, but he was trying to sell this message to the mainstream Jewish organizations before October 7th that they were much less interested in hearing it than after October 7th. Now, the ADL and people like that have really jumped on board with that messaging, and God bless.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of issues with the ADL, but I am glad that Jonathan Greenblatt finally is acknowledging that the left has huge, ginormous issues and blind spots with anti-Semitism. Yeah. So that's David Bernstein. And then Nia Lecht is this woman who I found within the past year. She is a Jew from the Soviet Union. She came to America when she was like 6 or something. And basically her beat right now is anti-Zionism and naming anti-Zionism as the sort of third and modern variant of Jew hatred. There was anti-Judaism, which was like the religious hatred. There's anti-Semitism, which is the sort of racial hatred of Jews, and now there's anti-Zionism, which is the hatred of the nation and and the state of Israel and stuff like that. And anyway, I'm sorry I always take so long telling my stories and giving the background, but whatever. I gotta just own who I am at this point. But she was talking about disinformation and misinformation, and basically like how Jews should be responding to the information war that we're in, and like even when you're interacting with when you have an interlocutor that you're debating or discussing, like how to determine if they are if they're engaged in misinformation or disinformation. And I think she had like, so that was this conversation just came out like today. So it's probably less than 24 hours ago on YouTube, on David Bernstein's YouTube page, if people are interested in this conversation. But I think she made a really helpful distinction between the two. She also said something novel that I haven't heard before, which is disinformation is not just, so misinformation being something wrong. And her idea is like, if someone is misinformed, you can essentially correct them, that the truth does correct misinformation, right? Whereas disinformation, we all, I think, colloquially understand disinformation to be like wrong information that's intentionally distributed, right? So it's misinformation with malintent, essentially. But she added this other component to it that I think is is really salient, which is that disinformation is always like really rooted in something true. So like
there's like that.
they'll
There's something that for it to grab onto to like give it some sort of like
intentionally
validity.
so.
Yeah. That
Right,
anchors it somewhere that yeah.
right. Exactly. So she's like, the misinformation is someone saying, like the Twin Towers were taken down on September 12th, 2001. And, that's misinformation. She's like, disinformation is, the exact date, the exact time, which tower hit first, like all of this like real information. And the Zionist entity that did this, the X, Y, or Z, right? Like you put in your piece of political propaganda basically within all of this true information. And so it makes it like all the harder to contend with. It bolsters it. Yeah. And so she didn't say this exactly, but what I'm trying to kind of talk about right now in the context of this conversation of like populism versus revolution is I think there are disinformers, right? Creating a whole bunch of misinformed people. So there are people who like have taken hold of this disinformation, but they themselves are just misinformed, right? And that probably makes up the majority there. Okay, that's it. Think, long rant.
No, I can see that. But then we run into the problem of misinformed people who might be like just misinformed because they got bad information, but who are also unable to absorb or take in information that goes contrary to an opinion or a view or an issue like that they've already formed or that is kind of like adopted by their group. And if that disinformation goes out en masse and all of these people adopt this and it becomes the commonplace or a commonplace view, then we have a lot of people who are going to refuse to really
at that point
it because they're like
it's cognitive dissonance at the individual level at that point, right? Because they already have bought into some type of belief system or overriding framework of how to view the world, and so the disinformers feed them this information, and maybe it's not malicious on their end, but to contradict it, to open their mind, to consider that it might be wrong or to consider a correction to it would contradict their framework and their worldview. And so, it becomes sort of like just a clean case of individual cognitive dissonance at that point, right? Like, well, no, this thing kind of like has to be true because I've already bought into this other thing.
Because the challenge is something beyond probably that piece of information on its own, right? It might it could challenge their standing in a group or their understanding or feeling tricked or feeling fooled or, whatever it may be there. And there's a lot of reasons. And, I don't know. I think it's like a really big problem now because information goes so quickly. It can spread and like people buy into things very, very quickly and en masse,
Yeah. And then like Zero Fox is saying, and
like to be wrong.
No, they don't. That's right there. We're getting into the psychological, right? The psychological tendencies of humans, which is doubling down and no one wants to be wrong. That's true. There's also like a sense of, especially if you've believed this for a long time, or if you said it really publicly, maybe you ended a friendship over it, or you created a scene over it. All of these things make it more expensive for you to even consider that you might have been wrong. And it's interesting because I think I think about like someone like me, and I basically think no human, this does seem to just be like, part of the human condition, and that you essentially need to like train yourself to be able to like not be wed to ideas, to be able to publicly change your mind. And that like even so on the one hand I'm starting to think like, oh, I feel so comfortable saying, I don't know, changing my mind, whatever, releasing my marriage to certain ideas because I already went through this like giant ideological shift, and came to terms with losing my people, you know, whatever, losing my group, losing my tribe. But even still, I know I'm like still vulnerable to these things, but it is almost like everyone kind of needs to be like,
people need to practice being wrong.
Even more than that. So there's that level of it. There's the cognitive dissonance of like being wrong and letting go of something that you've invested in. This gets us down into the trans thing again too.
Sunk cost fell. Yeah.
Right, exactly, all of that.
Yeah.
And then there's also just the social experience of going against the grain, and being disliked and having negative attention.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like I'm just like psychoanalyzing myself here right now. But like when I was in like the 7th grade, I like lost all my friends. There was like a rumor about me like kissing this boy at the softball field, you know, whatever, by the town pool. And girls are young and cliquey and whatever, and easily influenceable and like easily influenced. And so I like experienced this isolation. And listen, I'm a gregarious person. Like I found other friends, like it was fine, and my friends came around. These ended up being the girls that I was friends with all through high school and everything after that. But like I had not that I think that's what made me the person I am today. And I was clearly still very susceptible to this sort of groupthink stuff after that, because I became a radical leftist, you know, as I grew up after that. But there is sort of like something I do kind of, there is like something to like needing to like be forced into this position, because it's not natural to like to walk yourself into this discomfort. And maybe I say that because I'm jealous or in awe of the people who essentially come to change their minds, come to do these brave things without being sort of forced to, right? Because again, in my recollection of my ideological change is I was forced into it, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, I chose to, you know, luckily I had whatever, some idea of who I was as a Jew and as a Zionist and whatever, that I was able to stand my ground there. But it took me being socially and ideologically pressured out of my group and my movement. And so it's like people kind of, and maybe a lot of people need to experience that, whether it's in some small scale social way. Like I wonder though, I do kind of wonder, like, does having that some social experience like that make you, I'm sure it could go either way. People who lose their friends like that might be sort of get more some sort of like anxious, right, and want to like overcompensate, or, you know, ideally in the other direction, makes people comfortable, like, well, yeah, there's going to be things that I'm going to have to go my own, you know, or comfort with going against the grain.
Yeah. Well, I grew up very comfortable, not comfortable going against the grain. I don't think I was comfortable at that as a teenager. I was like fucking weird, and I was like a punk rock anarchist as a teenager in the criminal in the 90s, and it wasn't cool. Like there was not, it wasn't like cool back then. Maybe it was cool to a very small handful of people, but like there was no social cachet for it. Like I had it did not work in any favor at all. You know what I mean? So I was very comfortable being disliked and having just like a small, like I had friends and I had like a group of friends, but like to like everybody else, like I didn't get along with most people. I had very big problems with authority, but that was just very normal for me. So kind of like going against the grain in that way, and kind of like walking away from people in that regard is not that difficult for me. I don't know that that's a good thing about me though. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm sure it's caused me many problems in my life.
All these things cut both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. But like there was a big social cost to it before. And now I think that like people, you can get a few people, like the internet's kind of connected people in ways that like it wasn't connected before. If you were like a weird kid in like a suburb, you were kind of on your own, and now you're never on your own. right? So, but that also, like, those people who were like so weird as kids and like did all that fucking crazy shit, they had to be fully committed to it because they were alone. It was not cool to do all those things. Like, it didn't get you anything. It was like hard, and there was a big social cost. And like, you really wanted, most people wanted to conform in some ways to make their lives easier,
Right.
if you could. There wasn't this incentive to be weird and then find your weird tribe. There was no weird tribe. Like, that was it.
Right.
You were alone and everybody hated you. The end. And that sounds awful, but like, to a degree it was. So it took like a very specific personality, you know
Right.
what I mean, to kind of like to seek that out. As
And
opposed
like
to
you're
now,
saying,
I find it's very easy. Yeah.
oh yeah, right, because you can just be rewarded by people in passing, especially with like likes and comments, right? Like it with
Yeah.
with little to no effort at all, you can get all this positive.
Yes, but then you
attention
don't gain
and
the
affirmation.
you don't gain all of that, like the ability on like how to navigate the world, which you will need at some point in the real world if you're
Right.
like a bit of a freak, right? So
Well, yeah, right. No, that's true. And just to again speak about how these things cut both ways, the young person that you're talking about, sort of like the K archetype, is like there's the risk of then someone who's that determined, that young, to wear it as a badge of honor, right? To wear it as a badge of honor, to go against the grain and to do this sort of like antisocial is probably too strong a word, but right, you have that risk. But then on the other end of what you're saying, right? So the internet, the good thing about the internet and having access to all of these people all over the world is if you decide to be brave, it's be brave, right? And change your mind publicly, or like say something that's inconvenient or uncomfortable, you're really not going to be alone. And like,
yeah.
and God bless the internet in that way. Not, I like to think I have a healthy understanding of, the difference between internet friends and real friends, right? And there are people that I've met in real life who I've met on the internet, and people that I still talk to that I've known for many years, and all that's great. And then there's people who I had connection to the internet who turned, who then you've got to just cut that off because people are weird and, and stuff like that. And I still have, I have a wife and I have like family and friends in real life. So I do think like I'm grounded in that way. But thank God for the internet and connecting to like-minded people while I was changing my mind about politics and stuff, because I really I was just like almost entirely in the closet. These are, and they're not necessarily like relationship ruining worthy things. You don't have to go, that's something that I needed to take on throughout my life. I'm a very like strong-willed, wear everything at the tip of my tongue kind of person, basically, right? And so like, you don't need to shove this on everyone. Something I needed to learn. I'm telling this to myself. You don't necessarily need to, it doesn't need to become a problem in all the relationships with people who don't agree with you. But yeah, I mean, thank God for like-minded people on the internet that I could talk to and flesh these things out with, and then not feel so crazy and not feel so alone. So there really is sort of like, actually way less excuse for people to not be brave, intellectually brave, in the year of our Lord 2026, because not that I recommend going out and replacing all your real world friends with internet friends. That is not what you should do, but you won't be like existentially alone in that way.
No, I get it. I think that like possibly like why we have like so many, like the young lefties online just like losing their mind when they don't get their way. Like, I think that this is like a product of being too, like, never having the thing stress tested, being able to be as weird as you want, and like never having the pushback for it, and not learning how to deal with the world. Like, I think, I think that's probably important. Like, you know what I mean? That you have those experiences like while you're growing into an adult, so you can kind of like learn how to shape who you are in relation to the world that you live in, so you can come to like a comfortable place with like, who am I and how do I exist in the world, and how does the world react to me, and like are all these things congruent? And if not, like, it's probably better to figure that out as you're growing up than, like,
Right.
until you're 25 and, I don't know, screaming in a Starbucks having a meltdown because, I don't know, for whatever reason,
Right. Yeah.
these things happen.
Yeah. And I mean, there are so many directions this conversation could go in, of just like, how do we teach young people to like think, basically?
Mhm.
Is that it seems like that's an art that's been lost again, not to like dramatically oversimplify, and not
Yeah.
that everyone is necessarily going to be capable of that, even if you give them the tools, right? People do need to just grow up, right? There is something to just like time that, you can't replace time and experience. But yeah, sorry, that's I don't have anything to add other than like, I guess I'm snapping to what you just said.
Yeah, no, it's just, it kind of comes down to like, or we come back to like, oh, like, and what do we do, right? Like,
What do we
fuck,
do?
What the fuck do we do? Like, can wrap my mind around it and understand it like in so many different ways, and then it's like, oh, okay, so what do we do? Like, I know what I can do for me, right? But it's like, I want to fix everything. I know I'm not going to fix
Right.
everything, but at least, or I want to have an idea of how to fix things, and then I want to like bolster and prop up those things that I think will work, right? Or give those my time and attention rather than other things. But I'm not sure.
Well, yeah,
and
we're searching for a sense of control too.
I'm a control freak, so yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But like when you were talking about the anti-Semitism thing, I saw Ami and with Michael did their show last night, and they were talking about I forget who it was, but somebody essentially saying, like the way to deal with it is to like not freak out and pay it too much attention, like what's going on. And I actually like came down to that conclusion in the last little while. It's like there's nothing that Jewish people are going to say to like anti-Semites or people who are like spouting all that shit. Like there's no conversation, there's nothing that we're going to say that's like going to change those minds. The arguing, the infighting on the internet, it just like it's a bad look by how they like work that all into their already formed conspiracies. So even that type of,
we feed the conspiracies whether we want to or not. Yeah
and like really the thing to do is to like not address it directly in a one-to-one. It's like to not address Candace Owens, which says shit, or to not address the Megyn Kelly shit, and it's then to like potentially address it indirectly without like taking shots. I think you can do, or putting out, just like going about your life and putting out other things, or putting out a different narrative or whatever it is, but without necessarily going and like doing the fighting thing, because if the fight, it doesn't work and it just ends up fucking taking away, and then it feeds it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. I have just like a mixed feelings, and I change my I don't know that I change my mind. I think about this differently day to day. I agree with you. Part of me agrees with you very strongly. And certainly let me start with partially where I disagree. We all kind of like have our role. And so like I'm kind of okay with people reacting to things differently, right? I'm not saying you're not. So I don't even, this is not necessarily actually a point of disagreement. But like I go back and forth with the like giving attention to these things. I don't know that okay, I need to like spit out my thoughts. I really see both sides of this. Basically, like before October 7th, when I was moving away from the left and towards the right, ironically, right, like what knocked me out of the left was seeing all the anti-Semitism on the left. But as I moved towards the center and towards the right, I basically a beat that I was on was like Jews need to chill with the anti-Semitism accusations. Basically, my belief was like most people are not anti-Semitic, certainly not consciously, and some people will accidentally fall into saying anti-Semitic things, you know, like truly accidentally in the way of a microaggression, right? And like we can't react to that with cancellation and an offer to take them to the Holocaust Museum, you know, like we need to chill out. And there is I still believe that.
Yeah.
And then October 7th happened, and it's just sort of like, okay, things actually are really bad, and I'm constantly like, I think we've talked about this before, but it's sort of like, who was right? It's like, are things getting really bad now, or was the left right when they were saying that all of these was that, you know, it's like, and no, I don't believe the left was right when they were calling everyone a Nazi, but now suddenly in 2026 we have like a bunch of self-identified Nazis, right, who are way more mainstream than they ever were back then. Not that they're mainstream in a meaningful way now, but so I go back and forth like, who was right? And I would get pushback when I was doing this, largely from people on the left, but also from some people on the right. And so now I do actually think things got markedly worse after October 7th. So I don't think that I was like wrong to say those things before, but like what I was saying then becomes a lot less, it hits a lot less hard now when they're just like, is this anti-Semitism all over the place, right? And like I still absolutely believe that we need to be precise, and we should, you know, we shouldn't use it loosey goosey. But sort of like there is a shit ton of anti-Semitism, intentional or not. People are kind of swimming in it right now to a really disturbing degree. I mean, it's just mainstream Democratic position now that AIPAC is evil and trying to control. This is like among the right and the left. It's actually, it's worse on the left in the mainstream right now, even though the right has way more of the explicit Nazi problem. But so I don't know. I really struggle with this because part of me, and this is something that I was even saying during the war, is like there was so much conversation, even like the Charlie Kirk conversation, like that Charlie Kirk was having at the end of his life, of like, I guess, frustration with Bibi and with Israel, of like essentially like in his letter to Bibi saying like there should be like a website basically with all of these like facts, so that like people like me, your allies in America, can have all of these facts to deploy, you know, to like win the information war. And a conclusion that I came to a long time ago is we're never gonna win the information war. They're like, we are just so small, and even if most people are totally ambivalent or neutral and could be swayed to our side, like even if every Jew got totally activated tomorrow, which is never going to happen. That's the funny thing about these conspiracies of the cabal. Like we're just, in many ways, we're really not unified. But even if every Jew got activated tomorrow and on the same message, there's billions of Muslims who are very motivated, right? To spread the other side, to spread misinformation and disinformation. And so like this is where and why Jews do turn inward. And I'm like at the point with the anti-Semitic, I'm sort of at the Bret Stephens point now, his kind of new.
That's
Bret
what
Stephens,
he said. It was Bret Stephens. It was him.
Okay.
He was the one who made he was the one who was like, we can't.
Well, his thing right now is we need to stop fighting anti-Semitism, basically.
Yes.
And I think there's really something to that. Yeah. And it's like, on the one hand, it's like we need to stop allowing the framing, essentially, of like being on defense at all times.
Yeah.
And this is where, again, for better or for worse, Jews turn inward. And I mean, I don't want Jews to turn insular, but I do appreciate the turn inward, which is we really can't control what everyone else is going to say and do. We can make sure that the next generation of Jews knows who they are. You know what I mean? And like, and is armed with information and like an actual culture and actual connection. And that includes, especially for like American Jews, like an understanding of like the shared values and the importance of the West to Jewish survival and thriving and all of this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
think,
yeah.
no, I'm just gonna say, like, I don't always think fighting like it is a bad idea, but insofar as like, I think it really needs to be done like dispassionately, like really,
Yes.
like very dispassionately, like so non-reactionary, like take a beat, wait a week, like do not get in the mud in the shit throwing storm with everything. It never works. It does not work out well, and it's just like it's just a shitty place to be, and it becomes ineffective, and like nobody ends up. It doesn't feel good, at least. Maybe if it feels good to you, then whatever. I don't really care.
Right.
But like, it doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel productive to me. It doesn't feel like I'm making any. You know what I mean? So
No.
it really has to be from like a kind of like
Yeah.
zoomed out kind of dispassionate approach. So and I think there's other ways to fight that aren't like the direct. That aren't direct. That are like more indirect. You gotta be smart about it. Gotta be those like we are like these manipulative fucking
Yeah. No, yeah, and I agree with you. And I guess like, I mean, I hear like undertones of you like calling out Noam here, and it's not just him, obviously.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about Noam, but okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
But yeah. And listen, Noam is not some like preachy leftist, right? So like, that's not like exactly what he's doing. But I guess like I sympathize with the people who want to scream about it. I get mad at a lot of the people, even like on Twitter, a lot, and a lot of people are on the right that I think are just like really counterproductive. Like Mark Levin as one example of like a sort of large example, but even like these like smaller like accounts and stuff. It's like, yeah, this is not helping.
Yeah.
But with someone more like Noam, I'm like, I agree with him, and so like I'm okay. And I do think he's measured. Like I don't think he's catastrophizing really. I just think like you could argue whether it's an effective strategy or not, right? But then I get into like there is kind of no effective strategy because of the reasons I listed earlier. It's I almost feel like not that I want to disempower Jews, but like I think there's actually a little bit of empowerment in there, similar to like my when you let go a little bit. We can't change the information environment, right? Like we can do our best to, someone said earlier, but like to be good neighbors, and be good citizens, and to teach our children the truth. You know what I mean?
Well, the empowerment comes from putting your energy elsewhere, right? It's like, oh, I have all this energy and I'm putting it here and it's not yielding me anything. So like
hitting a wall.
Okay, I give up, but like I can control all these or can control or affect or impact
it is true.
all of these other things.
Yes.
And let me do that because like maybe that's going to make a larger difference that you know what I mean? Maybe that will end up changing things in a way that I'm not foreseeing right now. Because I'm like stuck in the fight. But yeah. Noam, I think, also has conversations, so he's not only fighting people. Like he's having thoughtful, measured conversations, and I
with
really
anyone,
appreciate his,
with anyone and everyone. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and I want to respond to something that Zero Fucks is saying in the chat about just like the steam, I guess, of the far right. And I don't know exactly how to feel. I partially agree. In fact, one of the notes that I wrote down in my notepad today, while I was trying to remember things that I wanted to talk about, was like maybe we're gonna beat this far right thing. Maybe it's already happening. And I had like a few reasons that I think that. I mean, I just like I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant to say that this problem is over because I think it because it is. It has all of these ancient echoes, so that there's like obviously something like salient about this that has stood the test of time. So like I don't want to be naive enough to think that we're going to just erect because the problem is too, and this is where I agree with Noam, and so I'm a little less optimistic than maybe Zero Fucks, is like I agree and I hope that they are just kind of embarrassing themselves, you know, that like, and that it's going to get tired. Like even Nick Fuentes is I don't, he's a hypocrite because he does the propaganda every other day, but you know, like once a week or something, right? Even he gets like frustrated and like feels like the cringe factor, right? Like with some of this stuff. And so I do hope that like that will continue and that it's becoming embarrassing. And I think too, like, unfortunately for these people, we we're still close enough to the Holocaust that like normal people are really averse to this kind of talk, you know, and to these kinds of things. And so if the more that it goes into the mainstream and normal people have to confront it, they're going to, I would like to believe, and I do believe that they are going to reject it. So there's that, plus the people who are into it for the maybe transgressive and whatever reasons, I think it's just going to become tired. I hope it will become tired. However, to Noam's point, even if they get tired of the specific like Hitler style, you know, like over the top flamboyant anti-Semitism that's going on right now, there is still this epistemic problem, and it's not just a right-wing problem, but it's really prominent on the right of this like conspiratorial open-mindedness. And so I worry that there is a deep problem on the right. And again, this concerns me because I only see a place for myself on the right. Why I'm so frustrated with this is because like I can't really relate to the people who I saw as like, I understand people who hate Trump and are concerned about whatever a lot of things on the right, but like still that's not enough for me to say I should have voted Kamala. Like no, really nowhere near enough. Really? And I know that the libs are going to hate to hear that and whatever, but like none of the stuff that's going on changes any of the real issues I see with the left, right? So I want a right wing party, you know, whatever, a right wing movement that's going to be fucking normal and productive. But so I don't say this because if the right doesn't get their act together, you know, I'm voting for Newsom in 2028. Because I'm not, but I could see myself like I could sit it out. I could skip the top of the ticket, you know, like if I and I don't. Yes, and that's very this is just like a me problem. Oh, poor me, right? That I'm not gonna have an easy time deciding who to put at the top of the ticket. But I do have essentially concerns with both sides of the aisle. And I think what's frustrating is like, so I do see myself as like sort of a centrist in that way, but I actually do think I'm on the right. I think almost all of my opinions in the modern sense, put me on the right, but I think both the left and the right have real epistemology problems with, you know, with like how they come to believe what they believe. And it scares me. And I think it's more of an institutional problem on the left than it is on the right. But the problem with that is, or one of the problems with that is the right wing, the Republican institutions that have not been eaten by this craziness are not sexy. People are annoyed with them too, and part of that is the populism thing, and that's where it's like, that's where it's so ironic that I like really appreciate Hutch and I feel for Hutch, because even though I'm not voting for any of the people that he's talking about, right, and I disagree with a lot of his like political prescriptions, I relate to his thing of like, and Destiny in this way too. I appreciate where they're willing to like be establishment shills in that way, you know, and like, and appreciate the moderate, normal mainstream Democratic Party. But the people don't, and that's where the lefties are kind of right too. They're wrong about like literally everything. But the one thing that they have like a decent point to someone like Hutch is like, okay, but those people are also really unpopular, you know. So it's like, we're like, I'm with Hutch. Like, give me a Chuck Schumer and a Nancy Pelosi literally any day over a Zoran Mamdani, you know, and an AOC and a Rashida Tlaib. However, people really dislike Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Like that's a problem. And the same thing goes on the right. So like, yeah, like, oh my God, I will like jerk off to Ted Cruz later. But people like on the right are they're not even over. I don't know. And maybe I don't have the same. I don't think I even have my finger on the pulse in the same way of like what the average person on the right thinks in the way that I think I do more of the average person on the left, because I live and breathe blue. I've always lived in blue places around blue people and all of this stuff. But so yeah, I think the problems are worse in many ways on the left. But I still have like really grave concerns, frankly, about like the future of the right, and just like and I said this at the end of the last episode, and this is I worry about like the cognitive rigor on the right. There are a lot of really smart people on the right, and I'm attracted to that, but there are a lot of and the same thing obviously goes for the left. There are a lot of fucking idiots on the left too, but on the left, a lot of the idiots are also smart. You know what I mean? They're like the smart people who can convince themselves of really dumb, bad ideas.
Yeah.
And that makes them more dangerous in a way. And this is just this is my ick. And I'm being
elitist.
I'm being elitist. That is, yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. But yeah, but like so maybe I should just close my mouth, because now I'm just making myself, unappealing to the everyday man. But yeah, like I'm concerned about I do believe in science, and I do like, there's just like certain things that I just like, I can't, that are a turn off in the same way that I'm turned off from the left. There are things on the right that are really turning me off. I want to be wooed. I want to feel sexy. No, I that's the problem, is there's no sexy politics around the things that I believe.
Yeah. No. I decided to brace my elitism because, why not? Like it's a good thing, overall. I want smart, savvy people like running shit more than I want idiots running shit. That's just
right.
It's just the way it is. I interact with people on a daily basis, so.
This all
and like, yes, everyone can vote, and not, I don't think we take that away from people, but like, I think like a class of people who are making more policy led decisions, it's, representative democracy is probably a good way to go in that regard. But yeah, and I think one of the issues, or one of the concerns I have on the right is, especially if you're talking with like the anti-Semitic shit, is like so many people have voiced these things or have like danced right up into the line, on the line, cross the line without, saying things, without saying them. But like that, for a group of people who have a really hard time being wrong or walking things back or changing their mind on things, like, where do they go? Like, what they've all said it. So many of them have said it now. And now what? Like, these people never say they're wrong, right? So like, those statements are they're just there, and that's just okay now. So that's something that, well, what do you do?
I guess to spin it on the positive, I like what Zero Fox said in the chat. I think there's probably truth to this, that the acceleration has slowed.
Mm-hmm. Where
of this
right?
movement on the right. Yeah.
Yes.
That like that it's still sort of ascendant, right? But the pace has slowed, and so hopefully the reach is gonna be stunted in that way. But I guess where I'm optimistic, it goes back to a theme that I've brought up multiple times here, which is the permission structure.
Yeah.
That I do think, like, if really all it takes is like a cool person to say that they got this wrong, or that they've changed their mind about something in so many ways, someone that is relatable it just gives you permission to do it too. It gives you permission to open
Yes.
your mind to the possibility, right? And so and there are always going to be brave people, and America's a country of brave people. So I am optimistic in that sense that really, because there are a lot of normal or people on the right who, even if they're kind of flirting with this stuff or not flirting with it themselves, but being permissive of some of it because they feel like they need to hold together a movement and they want to still have connection with these people so that they can try to influence them. Like there could be all of these good reasons to allow some of this stuff to kind of, not to fester, but to allow some of this stuff in. But I do think that really it just takes cool, smart people to change their mind publicly or turn it a little bit publicly for other people to feel free to do that also.
Yeah. No, I agree. I really like when I see people change their mind or like be wrong. I really like when I see people like not argue online, but like, or kind of argue online and then like apologize to each other, you know, like that kind of shit. I'm like, I'm all for that. Like, let's normalize that kind of thing. Just like, it makes it easier to like back away from a position or change, you know what I mean? Or look at things differently. And it is difficult. And like nobody does it. And people are so incentivized to not do it, especially, you know, right now. So whenever I see that, I'm like, okay, there's hope. Oh, Nate, the lawyer on Good Logic, was recently a great example of this. Yes, when he was arguing with what's his name? The guy, the other lawyer, Bronca. Was it Bronca? I think it was. Yes, it was Bronca. Okay. Yeah. And then Nate apologized and he did like a real apology. It was a good apology. Bronco was like, it's okay, I don't need it. But like it was good to see. Yeah.
This was today?
No, this was like a couple weeks ago. But it was like a good thing. Like he was like acting, I think, like a little, he was just taking shots at him or making little snipes in the conversation that they were having, and it's like not super in Nate's personality to like, I guess, act like that. He's not like he's not really like a debate pro or anything like that. And then he left, and then he kind of like watched it back, and he was like, oh, I was kind of an asshole. So then he went back and apologized, and you know, it was good to see, you know. Yeah. And I think it was like sincere, as opposed to like, I mean, I see people
trying to save face or something.
Yeah. You know who does these like apologies? I think I told you about this before. Tucker Carlson, he'll go out and he'll say something, and he'll say something awful about a group of people, and then he'll come back and then he'll apologize about it like a few days later. And he did this when he was talking about the event, the Zionist Christians, and then he did it when Dick Cheney died. He said something about like Liz Cheney like the day after, or I forget exactly what it was. But then he goes on his show like 2 days later and he apologizes for it. And the apology is so performative and it makes him look so sincere, like he's like this everyman and he's just fallible. And
hold on, okay, does it
to people who like him? Yes, but I think
okay, but I think only to people who like him. Sorry, yes, I'm sorry.
Because I
finish
think
your thought, then I gotta yell.
Yeah. I think that the insult though is planned so he can get to make the apology after. I think he like makes the insult and dark. He does these things. Yes, I think he's that manipulative. I think he like does these missteps that he knows that are going to be so egregious, because then he gets to go back and kind of do this self-flagellation. I'm just a man. I make mistakes. Here I am. And I fully believe that this is like baked into the cake with him. Like he makes the mistake on purpose so then he can make the apology, and the apology makes him look more sincere. And it's really gross. And if you watch him, you will probably pick up on this. But people, who watches Tucker? Fucking boomers, old people for the most part. He has a younger audience too, but the people who are dedicated to watching him.
Oh yeah, his audience is old, which is funny.
They're old. Yeah. So I think that, old people are a little bit more easily If the wolf
I
told
get
the north a little
okay.
bit
That's
more.
actually a decent point. That's actually a decent point. But the reason that I'm making all these faces is because that's the thing that I hate most about Tucker. There's lots to hate about Tucker, but he's so fucking phony. And I actually I hope that this will help my cause in the long run, because I don't see how anyone who doesn't already like him could start to like him, unless they maybe don't like him already, but they're bought into this conspiracy theories that he's pushing. Then it's easy to because he's just someone saying what you want to hear already. So that works. But he is the fakest. Every time I see him speak, it looks like a performance, like a bad acting performance, maybe a decent acting performance, in that he properly emotes, he plays a good character, but to me it's so transparently a character. And there's all this evidence. So the way that he speaks, again, to me is it's like unnatural. It's so obviously manipulative and planned. And then there's also been these things that came out, Nick Fuentes was talking shit about Tucker after their interview, and talking about the way that Tucker was acting the night before, and the Daryl Cooper interview that blew up on Tucker. Noam had Daryl Cooper on the show, on Noam's show, after Daryl Cooper went on Tucker's show. And basically, not that I'm gonna shed any fucking tears for Daryl Cooper, because I'm certainly not, but Daryl Cooper basically says, that he was kind of pushed into make the most inflammatory statement that he made of the night was engineered by Tucker, who the night before, Daryl Cooper is recounting how Tucker is bringing this up the night before, and it's clearly a point of interest. And then when he brings it up in the interview, Tucker doesn't bring it up and then ask Daryl to comment. He does this Socratic method. Tucker wants Daryl to say something, and so he is pulling. He's giving different prompts to Daryl to pull it out so that it can come from Daryl. So he's so fucking manipulative. And again, I don't think I have any fucking superpowers. And to me, it is so transparent. So I really don't get how anyone believes his shit, which makes it all the worse. These fucking lefties who are just enamored by Tucker Carlson. But why are they enamored? Why are they not seeing the obvious acting performance? Because they already believe the conspiracy theories, right? So they fit into that audience perfectly, because he's just saying things they want to hear. And what's the penultimate? I don't know if I'm using that word, but the penultimate, if I'm using that correctly, the penultimate example of that right now is Cenk Uygur coming out and declaring that he's finally going to admit that he does not believe the story about 9/11,
because the passport didn't melt.
Right.
But that was
his. Yes.
But it was found before the towers burned down. So, that's okay though.
And shout out
it doesn't need to be consistent, right? It doesn't need to be a consistent theory. So
shout out to Zero Fox, who commented on my post with some information about the passports and all of that, just a little quick debunking. But also shout out to Actual Justice Warrior, who did a video on Cenk and Anna's 9/11 trutherism a couple months ago.
Oh yes, I saw that. Sean did a great video on that.
Great video, yeah. And only more relevant now that Cenk is being even more explicit, right? He's just laying all of his cards on the table. Yeah.
And when he says that he doesn't believe the official 9/11 story, and maybe this sounds I don't know, maybe this makes me sound paranoid, but I don't know. Then who did it, Cenk? The Jews, the Zionists?
Well, yes, no, and he's actually a huge fucking pussy.
That's what he's getting at.
But that is what he's saying. Yeah, but he is such a fucking pussy because even him, like, just say it with just say it then, fucking Jenks, say it. Yeah, because you're doing more than insinuating. He didn't just say. This is also what I don't get. Oh my god, I hate lefties. People are so fucking dumb. So I guess if you are like not paying any attention at all, you could not understand. Then maybe Jenks' message is a little bit cryptic. But Jenk didn't say, "I don't believe the story and I don't know what happened." Right? He said, "Our government is owned." Our media is owned, right? And then in like somewhere later in the thread, like Israel comes up, right? So he's not even really hiding it, but he should just be. It was I don't know if it was a thread. He was responding to people, so there's like more messages below it. A short thread, I think, and then like responses and whatever.
Okay.
But I saw someone.
Saw the one post. Yeah,
I think it was like Josiah who reposted or quote tweeted Jenks' thing with like a GIF, whatever, disapproving of it, which I mean, you don't really.
Thanks.
Good. I'm glad Josiah believes. Yeah, doesn't believe that Israel did 9/11. But like the top comment on Josiah's quote tweet was this person saying like that she can't believe that like Jenk thinks it was an inside job, and it's like, no, bitch. Jenk doesn't think this was an inside job by the American government. He thinks this was a Jewish job by the Jewish state and Israeli agents in the United States. That's what fucking Jenk believes. And like even that too is just like more of like not that I think maybe this person is just like dumb and is just did not pick up on the not very subtle hints that Jenk was putting down there. But it's still just like even the left, they can just like write this off as like a conspiracy problem and not a Jew hating problem and an anti-Semitism problem. Which is just another reason why like the left is not gonna gain any sympathy back from me anytime soon, because they still, it is still the like minority and like unpopular opinion to be on the left and say that there's an anti-Semitism problem on the left.
Yeah. And like, you don't have to think that like the American government is giving complete transparency with everything surrounding 9/11 to like, like, I don't necessarily believe everything the government says all the time, but like, that doesn't mean I think that there's like a wider conspiracy around it. Like, governments have their own interests to keep in mind sometimes, and it's not always just like crazy malevolent,
nefarious,
you know what I mean?
Right?
Like, whatever. So, and that also doesn't mean that like I have any idea of like what else it could be. It's just like I am just dispositionally distrustful of government. So, like when people are like, yes, I agree that people maybe they don't want what's best for everybody, but like I also don't necessarily think that there's this big sinister plan going on and all that, because that like that becomes irrational and too many people and all these things. It doesn't add up. But like,
right,
it
takes too much collusion.
You don't have to be a fucking sheep, though, is what I'm saying. You have to like fucking believe everything. Like, okay, you can be skeptical of the government, but that doesn't mean that you go fucking, I don't know, absorb and suck down these fucking Jewish conspiracy theories that like you think you're being so, I don't know, like regressive and cool and I don't know, like free thinking.
Well, Jenk is totally bought in.
My eyes are wide open. My God!
Yeah,
and like
Jenk said, America is going through a great awakening. That is what Jenk said in his.
Yes,
America is going through a great awakening.
Yeah, you're getting propagandized. And
about the Jews. Like, it's so twisted.
And this is like this is like it's like such blatant manipulation that sometimes I get angry on behalf of people, but then I'm like, man, like, also, I don't know, like, you gotta think for yourself. And like Jake's not, I don't know if he sat down. I think he's thought himself into like these corners with his like with how he thinks and how he sees the world, and like the stances that he takes, and like the absoluteness that he talks about everything, that it all has to lead him to places like this. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
Just because of how he sees the world. You know, it just seems like this was just like when you look at it over a long enough time horizon, it's like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense then, because he's also very loath to change his mind and be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. It's hard for me to understand conspiratorial thinking to a large extent. It doesn't seem to me that it was inevitable that he was going to end up here, but I definitely agree with you that like it was inevitable that he was going to be this hard-headed about it, because that is how he is with everything. He is so like, because I was thinking, I was looking at his Twitter after he posted this thing, and I'm just like, dude, his Twitter, he looks manic. Like if you didn't know anything about Jank and you were just like looking at this in a vacuum, you'd be like, oh, this is a person like actually potentially having like a manic episode,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. But then it's like, well, no, actually, he talks this way about I mean, you're right, actually. I guess so much of like socialism and shit is conspiracy theorizing too. So I guess
like
it
his
actually
whole
did
conception
lend itself.
of America, the government, the donors, everything.
Yeah.
His whole idea of everything is this like moneyed conspiracy. And like, yes, there are moneyed interests. Yes. But like, I think you weigh it too heavily. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you give it too much, then there really is. Then it really controls.
There are moneyed interests on your side, Jank. Like, right, like money interests cut both ways, and like money is a fact of life. Like it's just it's like a meaningless statement. And
look, and if you were right
as a Jew, anything about money is going to come back to a conspiracy theory about Jews, unfortunately. So if your emphasis on the donor class and the moneyed interests, then it is going to lead you into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and if you were right, then the real dark, shadowy people in power would have like taken care of him a long time ago, right? Like that's just they have no trouble doing that. So it doesn't make any sense. It kind of like it fails at its like before it even goes anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, I still have light. We were talking about this before we got on, of when the sun was going to set. I wonder if this just changed like in the last week, because around this time last week it was like dark over by me, but
it was dark.
We still have some light, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was just a little ADHD moment for me there, but
it's dark here already. So
although what time is it for you? 11?
10:30.
10:30. Okay.
I mean, it was dark when we started.
So. That's true. That's true. You started in the dark.
It's February, so it's dark most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just brought us out for a second. Was there any train of thought there or thread?
No, I don't think so.
There?
No.
Okay.
My brain is it's like coming to a slow down.
Yeah, this is we'll wrap then. Hopefully we can do maybe even like Tuesday again. I'm doing a little Valentine's staycation
very nice.
over the weekend, but I'll be back home on Tuesday. So hopefully maybe we can do something around this time on Tuesday.
Yeah, that works. We'll be in touch.
Cool.
But tentatively, I will.
Yeah.
I will keep it open for that.
Cool. Oh, Chipingro, you just asked a question. Okay, before we check out, flesh this out. What do you ladies think about rebuilding the home you left? By that, do you mean the left?
I think that seems like what he would mean.
Maybe that's a good jumping off point for our next conversation. Because
I think about it sometimes. I sometimes still feel annoyed that it got taken over, but then I also think that in some ways I'm very like I just view the world very differently now. And I don't
it
know
feels
that, like,
inauthentic for me to try to change it from the inside because I don't think I'm on the inside anymore. I don't think I'm fighting for what they want. It would be unfair. That's why for me it's like I'll support Hutch. Like I'm gonna like send Hutch money basically so that he can try to fix, you know. Although again, he's really much to the left of where I am and where I would want the party to be, but he's like reasonable and normal. But it feels like it would be a lie for me to go like I'm not on the left. And so no one should respect me trying to fix the left.
Yeah.
And also, and I feel like I did that for several years. Like that's where I started. When I had this whole ideological shift, it was me like desperately trying. And yeah, I mean, it was just stunningly unsuccessful. Would things be different? In fact, if anything, I tried again. Not that I tried from the inside, but like my foray into conversations with the Live and Learn guys was sort of that. Like what I was hoping my conversations with these guys would be is like, here's someone who was on our team, who literally voted for Biden, right? Who in several of these key ways is whatever, like could still be tethered to us, and like how and why did we lose them, and to spark some reflection. Of course, that's like the exact opposite of what I got and like what came from that conversation. So like I think like Kay, it's like I like the idea of what you're saying, but it doesn't really feel possible at this point. But I think that's a good conversation.
Yeah. Can we make libertarians not be so fucking cringe? Like
no. I know. Because I also like.
It's like all the good libertarians aren't actually libertarians.
Libertarians are the best and worst people in this country, basically, is like what I've concluded. Like some of the people that I look up to the most and are like among my North Stars of political guidance are libertarians. And then I'm like, and also the Libertarian Party.
But they're reluctant libertarians.
True. Because the runner-up in the Libertarian Party primary, Chase Oliver won, but you know who the runner-up was? Michael Rechtenwald. Okay, that man is an actual socialist Nazi. Like he's like actual national socialist. So yeah, no, I don't think we can fix the.
I do love you, Wealth QC John, even if you're a conservatarian. Don't worry.
I love conservatarian. No, yeah, that's like my favorite flavor of people is with the sort of libertarian disposition, sort of, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
And I'm also like, I've been like, not to be like such a cliche, but I've been like looking into Ayn Rand more, and I think there's like no way that I become there's like no way that I become some like rigid libertarian, you know, like at this point in my life.
Why do people hate Ayn Rand?
I don't hate. No, I like Ayn Rand.
I like her books.
I like Ayn Rand, and it's been interesting. Just like learning about objectivism, and there have been like intra libertarian wars that I've really enjoyed watching. Because like a lot of it includes like Dave Smith hate, and like I'll, you know, that's like what I get off to. But so like I
identifies as a libertarian.
Yeah, well he's
Michael Moynihan, but like Michael Moynihan is like my third husband.
Yes, exactly. Like he's a total North Star for me, and he's a reluctant libertarian, as you described.
Yeah. But Dave Smith is not a reluctant libertarian, and that's why he sucks.
Yeah, true. Honestly,
right.
There, you know, Jeremy Kaufman. He's like I think that's his name. He's like a very like controversial person on Twitter. Anyone in the chat know what I'm talking about? Kaufman. Yeah, Kaufman. Yeah.
That's my last name.
Oh, well, you're probably related.
Yeah, from Canada.
No, he's American, but I just found out that I guess he runs the New Hampshire libertarian whatever Twitter, and I think like that Twitter account is pretty provocative too. But he I just watched a debate between him and this guy Zulu. I'm getting really deep in the libertarian internet world, but there's this guy named Zulu, and this guy named Zulu debated Dave Smith, and that was very satisfying to watch. And there's like a bunch of streams of that if people want to kill time. But this guy Zulu just recently debated Jeremy Kauffman, and that was pretty interesting too. And there's something admirable and beautiful about some of the libertarian purists. But I just see like such like glaring limitations because I see myself as like largely a pragmatist. Basically, I just I respect people who I don't know. There's something cool about people who can be like so observant and consistent. And I respect consistency. That's what it is, right? And I'm very attracted to logical consistency. And so maybe that's why I like a lot of these people, but I know that I couldn't like meaningfully join their group. You know, it wouldn't be fair. Same thing with like the why I can't go back to the libs and rebuild. It's like wouldn't be fair to them because I'm not actually on their team. But yeah. Okay, this is a start for a conversation for Tuesday. Hopefully Tuesday we'll do this.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for hanging out.
Yes.
It was great. Thank you for Tali for talking and all of it.
God bless.
We'll do it again soon. Have a good night. Have a good rest of your afternoon. And we will catch you guys next time. See you later.
Good night, everyone.